Admiral Shekhar Sinha here. Do you think this will put an end to the usual military bureaucratic red tape? Let me give you an example. The present status of HAL building capacities for Tejas as well as upgradation work for existing Mirage 2000 fighter fleet be best left unsaid. The same can be said for the Indian public sector shipyards as well. They are routinely, I would say, hit by delays and cost overruns. Do you think this becomes crucial, particularly at a time when we are looking at changed ground realities in terms of diplomatic positioning and also strategic positioning vis-a-vis India, China, Russia, Pakistan?
Maria, it's a very important point that you have made. As far as the warship building is concerned, there may have been delays for reasons other than what is our ability to build. The point is that India has been building its warships from late 60s, and we have been, by and large, almost all ships are built in India, except for very few, and they are only exceptions. So I would say that as far as warship building is concerned, except that you've quoted it has taken 23 years, and Captain Sharma has rightly given you the timeline. I don't think that shipbuilding has been such a stagger. But coming to HAL's question, Maria, unfortunately, the aerospace industry in our country didn't develop as much as the shipbuilding, warship building. And it has always been a tough task for the HAL to produce the aircraft which are required by our Air Force. And therefore, the Air Force was intensive in flying the foreign-built aircraft, and it was being manufactured under license. That too, almost 90% of the items used to come from mainly the Russians. So for HAL, it is going to be a big challenge. And I see that from the time this government has come into power, Prime Minister Modi's government, they have really given it a big push. The Ministry of Defense has given a big push. The defense PSU, HAL is one of them. And these PSUs have been their leash has been tightened, and they have been given timelines and seen that they comply with it. The second important aspect, Maria, is that now the government has permitted the industry to export their weapon systems and platforms. And that has given new sort of impetus to the people who are working in the field. You know that we have already sold BrahMos missile to Philippines, and some more countries are in the pipeline. And so there are another customers for our surface-to-air missiles, which we are building in collaboration with Israel. So I would say that all these changes in the laws, the changes in the time frame, and India's own economic stature having gone up, also what the Chinese are doing in and around us on the border, it has really given a fair amount of push and, shall I say, good josh, as they call it in Hindi, very good josh for everybody to put in their best and get all these things absolutely on track.
Yes,
Maria.
yes, Admiral Randhawa, that particular thought, with Russia virtually joining hands with China, particularly post the Ukraine invasion, we have also seen how, and also that's a fact that Russian hardware supply to India could be a matter of concern, hardware supply to India could be a matter of concern going ahead. And they tend to supply more to China and Pakistan. Do you think in that reality, self-reliance is a necessity, not really an option or a choice here?
I think the Navy had taken a step towards self-reliance way back in the 60s when they went in for building indigenous frigates. Although under license, they were built in Indian shipyards by Indian workmen, and they were very successful, and they laid the basis for a modern navy in India. Looking at the importance of indigenously developing designs and constructing warships, no questions can be asked about that. It is an imperative. At the same time, the financial support or the fiscal support for Navy needs to be looked at afresh, because naval assets are cost intensive. They are complex, they are expensive, And a word about the public sector shipyards. They also went up the learning curve. And the biggest benefit that came out of the public sector shipyards, firstly, the Navy received indigenously built ships. The second, foreign suppliers of ships could not take Indian Navy or the government of India for a ride. When it came to the occasional imports, the prices had to be kept in check. Otherwise, they knew that we would go for an indigenous option, even if it was not of the specification that we sought from abroad, or it would take a little longer, but we had an option. And I think the performance of our public sector shipyards drove home that truth to all suppliers that India can and will go the indigenous route. Imports are only a stopgap arrangement when required.
Okay. Then, Captain
now,
Sharma. Yes, please go ahead. Complete your point, sir.
I would just like to make one point that you said about China.
Yes.
Now, China has published white papers on the modernization of the Navy. And they have looked not only at the near seas, but they are intending to have a presence in the far oceanic regions, to quote the words from the white paper, the translated words. Now, China's is a very large trading country, and the majority of its petroleum exports traverse the Indian Ocean. And they are very conscious of this fact that their petroleum imports have to be kept safe.
Okay.
India sits astride the Indian Ocean, and it controls the choke points. It is in a position to exercise control over the choke points, Gulf of Hormuz, Gulf of Aden, and from Africa right up to Malacca. And Malacca is a place where we are very well placed to exercise control because it's next door to our Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So, build-up of the Navy, especially looking at China's attempts in the region to build the one belt, one road, foreign investments, large number of Chinese personnel stationed abroad. It is imperative that we realize that China is looking to have a permanent presence in the Indian Ocean
as well. Yes.
And in the Indian Ocean, and especially with what they call a logistic facility coming into use in Djibouti, and visits to Sri Lanka, especially by submarines.
Yes, that's right.